Hello and welcome to Warframe Unabridged. I'm your host Finn, and today we're going to continue our unabridged journey through the power kit of Nesha, as we take a look at his capacity to deal AoE damage with a loadout that I have dubbed the Altar Marshal. For this loadout, we will be discussing Nesha, the boy on fire, and even though we only used the body portion of the skin for this video, I have got to give a shout out to Polygon Monster for his work on the Nesha Divine skin, which is absolutely a must-have for Nesha, and it could be yours for free. See details at the end of the video. Taking inspiration from Nesha himself in history, I use his name Marshal of the Central Altar to describe this loadout. To follow suit with that inspiration, we give him a weapon fitting of his namesake, the Guandao, which is reminiscent of his fire-tipped spear. And to keep the motif, we will let him seem particularly serious with Harrow's noble stance. But the power that will be his bread and butter in this kit will be Divine Spears, and before we jump into the build, we should probably get to know the power a little bit better. Now for the sake of this build, we will be focusing on the damage that the power does, but we will save the majority of the crowd control aspects for a later build. In terms of damage, it deals 600 puncture as well as 600 impact, the former upon casting and the latter upon the power ending, and both features affected by power strength. Now this power is really slow to cast as well, and with the smallest amount of duration possible, from beginning to end, it will take 4.5 seconds, which includes 3 seconds of casting animations, 2 seconds for the very beginning, and 1 to decast. Now there are more aspects to this power, but we will explore those in a later video, and you really already know all you need at the end of this to understand how the Altar Marshal works. To begin, our build consists of Cunning Drift, Overextended, Transient Fortitude, Stretch, Streamline, Prime Flow, Intensify, Blind Rage, Fleeting Expertise, and Energy Siphon. I know you're likely eyeballing that 13% duration, but I promise it's intentional, and I will get to that. Now, our primary will generally include the Bolter Prime, modded for Corrosive, Punch Through, and we will generally equip a faction-specific Bane mod. Our secondary will generally be some form of throwing weapon, and while the Haiku Prime is better for what I'm kind of aiming for here, I'm going to use the Spira Prime, since it's currently available for farming, and it will still serve the purpose well enough. Now, our melee weapon, as previously mentioned, is the Guandao, which has some astonishing reach to it, and it's a crit fishing weapon on top of that. Now, for our companion, we will equip our Cavet to further enhance our ability to land critical hits. Now, for arcanes, we will equip Arcane Strike as well as Fury for this loadout, so to further enhance the speed and the damage of his melee attacks. You could of course swap them out towards something that might suit your other playstyles better if you prefer gunplay. For the Focus School, we will be equipping the Matterai School so that we're adding puncture, slash, and impact to all of the damage we are doing. And while this isn't going to last much longer on console, maybe I can release some updated information once Focus 2.0 hits us. Now the rationale behind this loadout is a mingle between wide-scale crowd control that is soft, as well as wide-scale area of effect damage, which is kinda hard. And we accomplish this with melee combat, as well as Divine Spears. Now with 224% power strength, Divine Spears will deal 1,344 puncture on casting, and a second half will later deal the same amount of impact. Now with Matterai, at the levels I currently have them at, each of those attacks will gain 806 additional damage, evenly divided among impact, puncture, and slash damage, lending to each casting to deal about 4,300 even. Now, at 250% power range, our Divine Spears will deal 4,300 damage to all enemies within 47.5 meters in any direction. In case you didn't quite know the scope of his range, that's a few more meters than Reckoning and World on Fire, but it remains significantly less than powers like Chaos in terms of area of effects. Now, the soft crowd control is twofold. First is the Impaling, during which they are completely immobilized, and it's said on the wiki that while they are impaled, that attacking them can trigger ground finishers, as they are treated as being knocked down. However, I have extensively attempted to do ground finishers, including with an augmented Prisma Obex, but it doesn't seem to trigger the augmented effect, unfortunately. However, it does appear that melee attacks are somehow enhanced in damage, in some cases. Personally, I would love to find out that I am wrong on the ground finishers, and welcome any input from those of you who have been successful in managing to do so. Now, second, for the soft crowd control, is the Slam, during which point they receive impact damage and are without a doubt knocked down. It only lasts as long as it takes for the standing animations to begin, but it's still an opportunity to deal some ground finishers for a moment, which grant a 16 times damage multiplier. This is essentially a power spam loadout, although with the Guandao, you should have very little issues keeping enemies at bay, and assuming you are making use of Warding Halo, you ought to be good to go, as it doesn't require any duration. Now while we are on duration, some may ask why I went with negative duration on the build. The answer is simple. With efficiency, I can cast more instances of this, which enhances the amount of damage that I am already doing. Since maxing out Fleeting Expertise causes negative duration, it means that the damage instances occur much closer together, and since this is already the case, we use Transient Fortitude to compound on that, further reducing the stagger between the damage and making the damage occur much closer together. And going with negative duration on Alter Martial, we do lose the hard CC aspect of the power, but it's honestly not truly needed for most of the gameplay in the star chart, which is what Warframe is balanced around in the first place. With this build, you will be dealing out enough damage to comfortably take down swordy targets of any faction, and if you're dealing with the Corpus, the Impact will be handling them for you. Nullifiers don't cause the spears to disappear, so the damage is still guaranteed. If you're dealing with the Grineer, there is enough puncture in this build to keep the DPS through swordy levels. If you are facing off with the Infestation, they have no form of damage mitigation, and this is not a status build, so you won't have to worry about the pesky Ancients absorbing your primary form of DPS. Now this can all sound very complicated, but let me give you the TLDR. Cast Warding Halo only as needed, otherwise cast Divine Spears when a horde of more than 5 are nearby, but otherwise keep swinging that Guandao. It should be noted that with the great strength and range of the Alter Martial loadout, that enemies will have a hard time entering melee range. With the range on this build, within the context of Warding Halo, enemies within 5 meters in any direction of Nesha will immediately be staggered every second and will be hit with 268 slash damage. This may not seem like much, but it effectively removes the chance of being hit by almost all infested units, with the obvious exception of Tar Traps, Toxic Clouds, Ancient Pull Cords, and a few others. So what about those of you who love gunplay? Well, for you we have the Bolter Prime, which is arguably one of the better DPS primaries in the game. Weapons like this excel with loadouts like the Alter Martial in that you essentially have no moving targets, whether you are shooting at those who have been impaled or you're shooting at enemies recovering on the ground. You are still firing at enemies that are not in rapid motion, and they make easy enough targets that you can feel safe equipping stuff like Heavy Caliber without paying too much of a penalty. We also equip a secondary capable of using concealed explosives, insofar that we can take down a nullifier bubble, as well as deal some splash damage to enemies that previously had the protection of them. And with that being said, I do hope you've enjoyed the latest installation of Warframe Unabridged. I realize that I have a smaller community than most, but I would still love to do a PS4 raffle giveaway of Nesha, including his Circa helmet, or if you have already received these items, I would be happy to gift you one of his Tenogen items, including Nesha Divine Skin by Polygon Monster, or Nesha Yaksha by Faven and Silverbones. One of these days I'll get that name right. You need only comment your PlayStation in-game alias and include a fun fact about the mythological Nesha. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate, and I don't mind if you repeat something that somebody else has said, so long as it's in relation to Nesha. And that's all there is to the Alter Martial. You can follow me on Twitter using the link in the description. If you like what we do here, go ahead and like the video. If you think someone else can benefit from it, be sure to share it. If you particularly love us and don't want to wait to hear our voice, you can always hit the notification button for instant gratification. But until next time, this is Finn, signing off.